we go.
Okay, hi Stephanie. Thanks for inviting me to chat with you. And I'm very curious to hear what you would like to chat about.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me, for catching up. I think when I originally emailed you, it was about some articles that I needed for some of my students.
Mhm.
And that was before this all got so grim. And I thought, I started being really curious about what must this experience be like for you. And then I started thinking about, I wonder if other people would find it helpful to know what this has been like for you.
Mhm.
Um, just because I know that people look to you as a philosopher, a thinker, a friend, a leader, and so that's where my mind started floating. Was how is Harlene thinking about this event?
Harlene is thinking, what a predicament, catastrophic predicament we are all in. And I say we are all in because I think we are worldwide, not only locally and nationally, but just globally. People are affected by this virus. Inundation into our lives and affecting us, I think, professionally, work wise, personally, our families, our friends, our colleagues. And I think people are feeling a little helpless and wondering what to do. And I guess I could say that I do to some extent, particularly in terms of the future, because I cannot imagine what the future will hold. And I cannot imagine going back to quote unquote normal as normal. I think we're going back to a very different world and we're going to be occupied by very different kinds of things, or at least to different extents than we have previously. Um, but I do think that this virus has a catastrophic significance for all of us.
Yeah, and you said something that made me think, this idea that we don't know what the future holds.
Mhm.
That's always true.
That's
That's
always true.
that's always,
Absolutely.
but for some reason, the uncertainty brought about by this feels different than the unknowns of before. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that. Like, why does it feel so different than not knowing the future?
Okay, well, I guess first of all, I think that life is uncertain, and there's always a certain amount of uncertainty and unpredictability for each of us and for the world. I think that it has come on so quickly, and I think the news changes, if not by the hour, by the minute. And we have sometimes politicians saying one thing and health experts saying something else. And it's like, who do you listen to in terms of what's the truth or real news and what's the fake news? And it's just, I think, totally out of hand in that way.
Right. Whereas compared to previous life's uncertainty, it's almost as though um, life was uncertain before this, but it was uncertain in a known kind of way. Like, you didn't know what the future might hold. I know in Houston, I've been chatting with folks, and I feel like in Houston we kind of had we've had practice rounds of this sort of thing with the multiple hurricanes that we've had and
Right.
disasters. So I think we're kind of used to that sort of uncertainty in that way. But the difference is that with the hurricane or the event, it comes and then it goes, and then you get to work cleaning up. There's no definite end in sight for this one. I think that makes it existentially distinct as well.
I think so too. And I think also, not only with hurricanes, but I think particularly here, what I'm thinking about is that there are other kinds of disasters happening simultaneously, like the climate, okay, the climate, civil wars in many countries, um, those are some of the things I think about. All the plastic floating around in the oceans. I mean, there are just so many different things going on that make us really question the future and make us really question the stability of the present.
Right, right.
You talk about the number of people affected and the number of deaths. That's just mind-boggling. It's really hard for me to wrap my mind around to think that 100 to 200,000 people in the United States might possibly not only be affected by the virus, but could die from it.
Right. And what you just said about this not being the only, this is in addition to the
In
other
addition to,
vaccines.
mhm,
And I also have this sense of a very privileged position of experiencing this as someone who um, is, I look at India and how the quarantine in place for them is you might die because you run out of food. Um, and how dramatically different that is from here where we're hoarding toilet paper.
right, right, yeah,
It's pointed out how interconnected we all are and how we cannot cling to isolationism to help get through this. Um, and then also, I feel another level of privilege that my career, my livelihood, is one that can be moved online. There are so many other people who their livelihoods can't be moved online,
right.
and they've lost that.
Lost that, yeah. And so many people who would not have the savings to even survive their bills for a month. Yeah. I mean, that's huge statistically in the, I think worldwide and also in the United States, it's amazing. Um, but I think not only the interconnectedness, but the importance of feeling connected in our more intimate settings of family and friends and colleagues. Uh, it's really highlighting the importance of that and how alone one can feel around in one's home all day.
I guess that's a personal question I wanted to ask is how have like literally how have you been passing your time?
Well, I've been trying to catch up on all of my projects and things that I have to do, like with the ICCP program, with my writing. I have a new book in progress and working on some of the chapters there. So it's not that I lack for anything to do regarding work and sitting here at my computer, um, but it's like all the little things that can distract me that I'd rather be doing, like taking a long walk, taking multiple long walks, going out in my yard, cooking something for a change. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, I'm able to use my time. I have no problem with having things to do.
You
So I
haven't
feel
got
fortunate in that way.
yeah,
Um,
no cabin fever yet.
no cabin fever yet. Yeah,
Good, good.
yet.
Yet, yeah. We have a little bit more time to go. Uh, I'm wondering about you as a philosopher, and you're a person who's written a lot about relational beings and interconnectivity and reflective process.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if any of these ideas, not knowing, if any of these ideas stand out to you um, in regards to this particular time, or if you have any words of wisdom to share with people who maybe are having a hard time.
Okay, well, first, thanks for this enormous compliment by suggesting I might be a philosopher because I never think about myself that way. Oh my gosh, that's something really, it's really something. So I guess I'm sitting here thinking about not only not knowing and uncertainty and conversations and relationships, but I started thinking about 3 T's during this crisis: the importance of being able to talk with others, to being able to talk with yourself, uh, to be physically or electronically together with others so that you're not feeling alone and not at the risk of having the same talk or same conversation in your head rolling around over and over and over again. And for me, I think those 2 things are connected to trust.
Mm.
Um, in this world where I think it's so important to go beyond vested self interest. And I think when we're not connected, when we're not together, at least somewhat on the same page, not necessarily, at least in the same book, um, and we don't have trust, we fall into being prisoners of our own self interest and becoming blinded to other things going around us, going on around us, and to other people and their feelings and their priorities and their values. In other words, I think we become knowing and we become certain of our own perspectives. And I think this is what's so unsettling about what's happening now in terms of this whole notion of knowing or not knowing. Not that we can really ever know, and maybe not that we can really ever not know.
Say more.
Well, I think of it as kind of ends of a spectrum or continuum where the marker goes back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That the things that we think we might know, but we really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We really don't know what we don't know. So that's why I think of knowing and not knowing as what do they say, both sides of a coin?
Right.
They're really, for me, intertwined, not only personally, but in my work, particularly in my work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that's another piece of this is that the the things that we know and don't know are shifting, as you said, almost minute by minute. And I think in our day to day lives, the things that we know and we don't know um, are a little more stable. They maybe change week to week, month to month, but they don't change as quickly.
It's quickly, right.
I wanted to share with you something that came up in a Facebook conversation that I had with, I put a prompt out to the Houston Association of Mental Health professionals. And the prompt said, uh, you know, 6 months from now, what conversation, if we were speaking, what conversation would you be having with me? And what traits about yourself would you be telling me that got you through this time? And it was very interesting. I'll send it to you. I made an image of the most common factors that came up for people.
Okay, yeah, please.
And the most common ones were family, love, flexibility, humor, friends, um, uh, faith, appreciation, and optimism. And I think it's interesting because those first big ones, the friends, the family, the love, I think those things have not changed. Those we have continued to know in this time.
Mhm.
perhaps even know better in this time.
I would agree with that. Yeah, for me, those kinds of things are predictable.
Right.
At least there's a lot of predictability. Yeah.
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 Or you would hope they would be, right? And I think that that's another, I think about members of even my own family right now who are, before this, they were going through some hard times with their family, processing divorces or difficult situations with their children or things like that. And it's been difficult this time without that family, that love, that connection. So it kind of, as a marriage and family therapist, emphasized to me kind of the work that I do to help families love each other more. And families defined however a family is, but
Right. And what love is for them, yes.
precisely, yeah, as a system to have connection more.
Yeah.
And my mind's floating back to those 3 T's that you were talking about. To be able to talk in a trusting way together with somebody is so important. And when we lose that, things don't feel real anymore.
I'm thinking about the online rather than face-to-face conversations that I've had with clients, with colleagues this week. And I wrote down the words that one woman used, and she said, I'm so isolated. She says, I'm at home with my daughter and my husband is a physician who is at risk because he's working in a hospital. And then she said, I have a son who works in an ER room. I have another son who is a nurse. And I have a daughter who has a health problem. And she said, I'm not sure why I'm telling you this, and I'm not sure what I'm asking for. She said, but I'm really scared about the future. And I think that's what's happening is that, and she was talking about the virus, and I think that's been the centerpiece of many of the conversations I've had with people this week. That's what's on people's mind. And again, the uncertainty, the not knowing, the unpredictability. Yeah.
So my mind's floating to this notion of hope, and how hope is in the Our Lady of the Lake program that you co-founded with Diana Carlton. For those of you who don't know Diana, on the practicum evaluations, and I don't know if this is something that was around or was from you guys, but I noticed that we literally measure how much a student therapist, is able to convey hopefulness with their clients. And I think about authentic hope versus false, hope being kind of cheerleading and, oh, just focus on the positive and giving suggestions and telling people what to do. But this situation that you just described with your colleague friend, I'm not sure who that was, but the need for socially generated, socially constructed hope. That if you were to tell this friend, colleague of yours, oh, don't worry, they will be fine, it would perhaps increase fear, increase anxiety.
In other words, false reassurance doesn't help, and it can increase. Yes. And you're talking about your student evaluation process. reminds me that years ago when I was very interested in talking with clients who did not have good experiences with therapy and those who did, and there were two words that came up all the time, and one was freedom and one was hope. And what it was that they would say, I didn't leave with a solution. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I had some hope. And that has just stayed with me all this time. And then another thing, and freedom was a word that a couple of people used, but it was a word that I used to translate their words to my language. And it was if they were no longer prisoners of their problem or their life situation. They felt some, if you want to call it, freedom or flexibility or maneuverability, connected with hope that something would or could be different. They didn't know what it would be, when it would happen, what it would look like, but yeah, I think hope's very important.
Well, and I think what you were just describing, connecting it with freedom, that we don't know
Yeah,
so much about the current state of things. We don't know. I mean, the you know the economy. Like, I saw this beautiful meme. I'm not sure who wrote it, but they said um, we're talking about rushing back to the economy after this is over, but should we in the same way, right? We don't know what it's going to look like. And this silly nagging hope in the back of my head that what an opportunity to maybe go back to things in a different way rather than in the same way.
yeah,
Um, you know, uh, and I think about the clients, the colleagues, the friends, the family who have lost their jobs,
mm-hmm.
who don't have the savings, who don't. I mean, who are sick. I mean, I thankfully don't have any friends currently who are sick with this, but I know friends and colleagues who do have some friends who are infected with this and who are in medically induced comas and trying to survive. Um, what can we do as therapists, as people, as thinkers to generate authentic hope um, rather than false hope?
I'm not sure that I can, and I know you're not saying this, I'm not sure can purposely generate hope, but I would hope myself being there with someone, having them have a sense that I am a companion with them on part of their life journey, albeit very short, very difficult one, and that I will be there for them to support them in whatever way that I can. But just having that kind of connection, that kind of support would be helpful and would engender some kind of hope that at least I'm not totally alone in this.
Right. Well, it's emphasizing to me that I'm always training therapists to you know don't feel like you have to have the answer. Don't feel like you have to tell them what to do. And that can be hard when it's something like how do I get my teenager to stop playing video games, right? They have all sorts of suggestions and ideas and they want to share them, and it's hard to resist that temptation. But with this, no one has the answer. You it makes our job kind of easy in some ways because we have to just be there. We don't have any other choice. We can't tell them what to do.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in some way, that's why I think for me, the past couple of weeks in working with my clients and my students, it's given me great comfort to know that our epistemology, our theoretical lens, has been training us for this the whole time in some ways.
Training us for life in a way, and whatever it brings to us. Yeah.
Right, right,
To be able to face it and handle it in whatever way it can be handled.
right, right. It's I think I've over the years I've had some people say, oh well, yes, collaborative practices and narrative therapies and all those postmodern therapies, they're lovely and they're very flowery and they're great for people who are looking for some coaching maybe.
Mm-hmm. And
But
very bright and verbal.
right, for some real thinkers. But it's not good for crisis counseling. For crisis counseling, you need to tell people what to do. And it's like, nope. I think that this is kind of a real moment of uh, learning for me too, right? It's like yeah, this really is, um, and I know I've got major confirmation bias, but this is really something that is being done and can be done very well, and in some ways is the most fitting way to approach a situation like this.
And I'm thinking, Stephanie, what a wonderful exercise for your students, your learners, in terms of to think about how people were trying to help you. What kind of suggestions, what kind of advice were they giving of what you should do or shouldn't do? And how did you receive that? What were your thoughts? Did you feel understood? Did you feel, how could they think I was so stupid I had not thought of XYZ? Yeah. Yeah.
I know to wash my hands. Of course, I'm washing my hands. Yeah.
First, I'm singing happy birthday twice. Yes,
um,
but how quickly are you singing it?
yeah, exactly. Sing it slowly. No, I think there's also just that piece. This is another theme that came up for me while I was thinking, while we were talking, was there's a universality in this that is, um, everyone in the world is being impacted in some way by this. And there's also a particularity in it that, is particularly to every single person. And I think it's, you said something earlier, preparing you for life. And it's almost like this phenomenon, this pandemic, this virus is shoving in our face our humanity in a way that can't be ignored, and our connectedness. And my mind just keeps leaping forward of when this is said and done, how can we remember that time?
I think that's an important note to pause on
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and to capture.
Yeah.
Maybe to title this.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I like your words. No, I really do. I think they capture it. Yeah.
Yeah. Does this feel like a good time to pause? And
It seemed like you had summed it up there. Um, that we are human beings. We're frail. We're fragile. Life is as well. And we don't and we can't have control of everything. And what that calls forth.
thank you so much for chatting with me today. We didn't come up with any solution or any.
No, of course, no solutions. Well, we
Yeah,
didn't have a problem to solve, did we?
yeah. I'm
Let's
feeling.
talk about it, and maybe once we each step back and pause and take time to reflect on this conversation, we may have a slightly altered idea about ourselves and the situation, and our futures, and our present. So thank you for inviting me
Yes.
and arranging this.